Trump loses another key member of his defense team, especially about Mar-a-Lago. First, it was Evan Corcoran. Now, Tim Parlatore, his lead lawyer, is, wait for it, no more. What does all this infighting on the Trump legal team mean for Trump, and more importantly, for Jack Smith and justice? Like client, like lawyer, Trump longtime attorney and bumbling fixer Rudy Giuliani used to be America's mayor. But a new suit filed under oath by a former female longtime employee claims that Giuliani is a serial predator, groomer, sex abuser, racist, and anti-Semite, and she was forced into a sex relationship. But that's not even the bombshell. Plaintiff Noelle Dunphy swears under oath in her suit that she may have incriminating texts involving Fox News and the Trumps, attention Smartmatic, and that Giuliani confessed to her that he was running a presidential pardons for sale scheme for $2 million a pop to be split with Trump, attention Jack Smith. Finally, it looks like former first daughter Ivanka Trump and disgraced and recently jailed Trump CFO Alan Weisselberg are in the New York Attorney General's crosshairs. They had until Monday to file sworn affidavits about why emails and documents are still missing in the New York Attorney General $250 million fraud suit. Did they comply, or are they in contempt again? Well, Alan Weisselberg give a deposition now that he's out of jail. All this on this week's edition of the Midweek Legal AF, only on the MeidasTouch Network, with your regular co-anchors, Michael Popok and Karen Friedman Agnifilo. Karen, we're in the same time zone. We're together. It's just you and me and all of our listeners and followers. I'm so glad to see you.
It's good to be back. It's great to be back.
Yes, I agree. We're learning where all the mute buttons are and all of that. Let's jump right in. Everybody loves the show, I think, and we hit the ground running like right away. You know, we don't sit around and talk about, you know, although I think your trip was great and I want to talk about it offline, but we don't talk about those kind of things. We get right into it. Tim Parlatore, who you, me, and Ben just last week when we were on assignment outside of the country in different places. I think Ben was in New York. We talked about Tim Parlatore. For those that don't know, Trump has had a reasonably stable group of lawyers for at least a year for many of his things involving Mar-a-Lago, and Jim Trusty, who used to work with Jack Smith in the U.S. in the Department of Justice back in the day. Tim Parlatore is also one of his lawyers. Evan Corcoran for a long time for all things Mar-a-Lago. And then one by one, everybody started departing. Evan Corcoran testifies before the grand jury, stripped of all attorney-client privilege, and then he's got to go because he's probably a target of Jack Smith's Mar-a-Lago investigation for all the potential lies that he told to the Justice Department, the FBI, about the documents. Steps in Tim Parlatore. Tim Parlatore, just last week or the last 2 weeks, sent a letter on his firm's letterhead, Tim Parlatore law firm, to the House Intelligence Committee, telling them basically this is the story that they're setting up for Mar-a-Lago. It's like a homeowner who leaves a house and is rushed to leave and just overpacks, throws too many things in the boxes. It was helter-skelter and it was a mistake and it was innocent and what's all the kerfuffle? What's the problem? Except a couple days later, Donald Trump went on CNN. I love that town hall now. Went on CNN and said that it wasn't a mistake and it wasn't a rush to pack his boxes and that he knew exactly what was in those boxes and he purposely took them and he had the right to take them and show them to other people and show off his top secret mementos that he took with him out the door, completely blowing a hole in what I guess was a working attempt at having a defense in the case now that Trump admits to the crime. And within a week, Tim Parlatore said, listen, this is my artist rendering. I've had enough and I'm heading out the door. Now, of course, out the door for anything in Trump world means let me bash the Justice Department. Let me say that their investigation is corrupt and all of that. Now, Tim Parlatore had a very interesting thing happen in December. He went into the grand jury but he still had his attorney-client privilege that wasn't stripped away yet by Jack Smith. And he testified. Then he came out a lot of bravado and said, "Oh, I just gave it to the grand jury. I told them there's no obstruction. We did everything right." And then the government tried to get me to waive my attorney-client privilege, and I wouldn't do that. That Tim Parlatore. I want to hear from Karen, the prosecutor, two things, and then you take it from there. One is, we keep saying we're on the 2, 3, 1 yard line of this football field of Mar-a-Lago prosecution, with Evan Corcoran having gone in, and we already heard from Mike Pence, and now we got Tim Parlatore on the way out. Where do you think we are? Is the indictment coming? And if so, when? And what do you think it means, if anything, that Tim Parlatore quit today the Trump Mar-a-Lago defense team?
Look, the only defense in this case, I think, potentially, is the one Parlatore was putting forth, which is it was an accident. We packed up boxes and things got caught in there. Look, it happened to Joe Biden. It happened to Mike Pence. It happened to, everybody does it, right? It's everybody packs it up and didn't realize that these documents were in the boxes that they packed up. And so that's really the only potential defense he has there. I still think that wouldn't necessarily fly in the end, because there was so much back and forth between the National Archives requesting certain documents and Trump through his lawyers about giving the things they knew existed and had not received. And I think there's a potential obstruction charge there as a result. And so the only real defense, though, to me, is there's an accident. But I think really what Trump is doing is he's saying, no, I don't want that to be the defense, because that's a really tough, the accident, it was an accident defense, doesn't fly with the obstruction charge, right? Because it's one thing to have the stuff and not realize it. But once you realize it and you lie and you lie to people who are asking for it back, then you have the potential obstruction charge. And I think the reason Trump is going with this other defense now, I could take it, it's mine, I could do what I want with it, it's because then that's the only way to fight back any charge of obstruction. Because really, if it really is his, which it's not, then then there's no case there. They don't have a right to it. So I think, it looks to me like Parlatore just said, I'm out. Like, this is, and I think that happens with lawyers. I'm sure it's happened to you, Popok, where you have a client who wants you to do something different than your better judgment. And at the end of the day, what you say to the client is then, I'm not your lawyer. Like, you either want me to, give you my advice, or you don't want my advice and you want to do your own thing. Because if you want to do your own thing, then you should. I'm not just a mouthpiece. I'm not just a puppet. So that's what it looks like to me. I agree with you that that's probably why he resigned today. And just to answer your first question of where are we, look, at this point, your guess is as good as mine. I've been fairly loudly saying lately that it's time to bring this case, that you can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good at a certain point, because of the unique situation that we are in, meaning that the 2024 primaries are right around the corner and Trump looks like he's going to be the candidate. At a certain point, just by their own Department of Justice policy, they're not going to be able to bring a case because it could impact an election, and their own policy says you can't do that. So, they got to do it, and you have to make a choice. We've discussed this before. That I think it was even last week where we talked about how Alvin Bragg could have waited until he had everything. He could have waited until he had the case that he brought involving Stormy Daniels, and waited until he could bring the other case, the asset valuation case, the one where the two prosecutors noisily resigned, and it's the companion to the Tish James $250 million civil suit. But, prosecutors know that you can't always necessarily wrap everything in a bow and get it all perfect. Sometimes you got a case, you make it, you bring it. Another example of that, I think, is where Eastern District brought a case against George Santos. There's only 13 different charges in that, I think, something like that, a little more than a dozen. His life, I mean, I think they're going to supersede that 10 times over. His life is a giant lie. You're going to have a 100-count indictment when you're done with him. But at a certain point, you just got to bring the case, right? You have to. You've got to bring the case, and you've got to start it, because that sometimes it's important. The rule of law is important, and upholding the rule of law, and justice is important. And so I think Jack Smith has a case. It's ready to go. Maybe he's in the process of getting the approval, or whatever he has to get from Merrick Garland. But I think we could see it any minute now, and frankly we should, because if we don't, it's going to be too late.
Yeah. So a couple of things, and we got some breaking news that we'll do right now, right on this very issue, to kind of prove your point, Karen. We've got let's start with the Truth Social posting by Trump, in which he doubles down on his "I'm allowed to take it to avoid obstruction," which is completely inconsistent with what his own lawyer, the now departed Tim Parlatore, sent in to Congress in a public letter. So we've got that. The second bit of breaking news is that CNN is reporting that the National Archives, which is at the heart, of course, as a primary actor in everything Mar-a-Lago, is set to hand over to special counsel Jack Smith at least 16 records showing that Trump and his closest presidential advisors were instructed about how to correctly declassify documents and what that declassification process would look like, which goes to notice, willful intent, mens rea, and criminal mind. And so that's going to end up in Jack Smith. It's hard to believe he didn't have that already, but the reporting is he's getting it. He's getting it right now. And so that we don't freak everybody out, the 60-day rule that Karen touched on is that within 60 days of an election, the Department of Justice will back off of their ongoing investigation, not drop it, just put a pin in it and pick up with it after the election. We're not in that box yet, because that election is more than, of course, 60 days. And we're more than, if we're midterm season is, primary season is 2024, we got 7 or 8 months, but we got 7 or 8 months. Let's get it off the ground. We'll never, look, of all the things that he's going to be indicted for, Donald Trump and those around him, all his cronies around him, we now know he's not going to get convicted of these things in time for the election. But he will be hopefully indicted and charged, whether it's Fani Willis or it's Jack Smith. Let me just disabuse anybody if people haven't been following the calendar. They're not going to be able to cram an indictment and a trial in before the election. So he's going to be at worst a multiply indicted candidate at the federal and double state level before. And if that doesn't influence his people's decision making on who to vote for, then then shame on them. I think it does. I think not that we shouldn't worry. We should always worry. And we have a candidate that we like a lot, but has his own issues with the general electorate. But in terms of this one, if people, my view, Michael Popok's view, he got 7 million less votes than Joe Biden last time. He's if anybody thinks he's going to do better with women, independents, and others who are sitting on the fence that he did last time, he'll do the same with the MAGA. He'll do the same with the Kool-Aid drinking right-wing Trumpers whose entire emotional and political lives are tied to Donald Trump. But the rest of thinking America and those who are really independent and women after Dobbs and him doubling down recently on the Dobbs decision, I just don't see how he possibly wins national office. I don't know. And if the only thing that's holding Joe Biden back is his age, I think that rock, paper, scissors overcomes, multiply indicted Donald Trump. But that's me. Let me throw one thing out at you, Karen, and then we'll move on to the next segment. Parlatore has also been very, very vocal about critiquing others on the legal team for Donald Trump. So it wasn't just us going after Joe Tacopina, or as I like to call him, the coloring book man. It always looks like he's doodling in a coloring book at the counsel table. Tim Parlatore was asked about Joe Tacopina, and he's been quite public, probably more so than Donald Trump would like, in saying that he did not think that Joe Tacopina is covering himself with any glory in the Manhattan DA's 34-count indictment related to Stormy Daniels and all of those issues. And I'm sure he didn't think that Joe Tacopina did very well in trying to defend Donald Trump, if that's what that was in the E. Jean Carroll case. I don't think anybody could. So, look, when Trump falls out of love with his lawyers, they either get fired or banished. He fell in love with Chris Kise, paid $3 million through a Save America PAC. Chris Kise showed up for much fanfare. He did something wrong, probably telling the truth in court one day, and Trump banished him to another state. Tim Parlatore going after somebody that apparently Donald Trump likes a lot for whatever reason, Joe Tacopina, looks like it banished him. He likes Alina Habba. He holds closely, and you can fill in the jokes there. He holds closely the people that he's like enamored with for whatever reason. And he cuts loose, reasonably competent lawyers that could probably help him in some way. And I think that's great for Jack Smith, because I'll tell you what Jack Smith legal team and the Trump legal team do not have in common is talent, continuity, focus, devotion to cause. That's the Department of Justice. That's Jack Smith's special counsel team that he's assembled. That's what is, they are just sawing and cutting wood, cutting lumber every day, stacking it up and coming back and doing it again. And that's not what Donald Trump has. And he's got disarray. He's got inconsistent position taking. He's got lawyers backbiting on his own group. This is not what proper criminal defense is made of. And that's a good thing. Karen, anything else on that point? Or we'll move on.
Yeah, no, it's, I agree with you about the lawyers, and he really likes, I think because one of Trump's major strategies is to disrupt. He doesn't want to have a real trial on the merits. He wants to try to blow up the case and somehow get people to do things that'll blow up the case, delay the case, do his bidding. So it's a way of just not having it be seen on the merits, because once that happens, he'll be found liable like he was in the E. Jean Carroll case. So, I think you're right about that. I think Jim Parlatore is a more serious lawyer than some of the lawyers that have been on his case, but he's gone the way that many of the lawyers have gone. So, to be continued. But Jack Smith, who, as everyone knows, I used to work with, and I know him. He's extraordinary. He's excellent. He's a case maker. He knows what he's doing, and he is clearly in the final stages of this. So we could see an indictment, I think, any time, and hopefully it'll be quite soon.
And hopefully in time for a midweek edition of Legal AF. And the next segment, Karen and I are going to talk about Rudy Giuliani and the bombshell that was buried inside of Noelle Dunphy's sworn under oath complaint filed in New York State Supreme Court just a day or so ago. We're going to cover all that, what it means for Rudy, what it means for Trump, what it means for Fox, after a word from our sponsor. Our next partner is Athletic Greens. My family and I take AG1 by Athletic Greens literally every day. I gave AG1 a try because I wanted better gut health, boosted energy, immune system support, and wanted a supplement that actually tastes great. I take AG1 in the morning before starting my day, and it makes me feel unstoppable and ready to take on anything. I'm doing something good for my body, giving my body the nutrition it craves and covering my nutritional basis. I've tried a ton of different supplements out there, but this is different, and the ingredients are super high quality. Very quickly after using AG1, I noticed that it improved my energy and made me feel great. AG1 makes it easier for you to take the highest quality supplements, period. Just one daily serving covers my day's nutritional basis and supports my long-term gut health with 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, and whole food sourced ingredients. It's one scoop of powder mixed with water once a day. AG1 is a really seamless and easy daily habit to maintain. I'm asked all the time about the one thing I'd do to take care of my health if I could only pick one. And this is it. AG1 by Athletic Greens. I can't think of another daily routine that pays off as well as AG1, which is why I trust the product so much. If you're looking for a simpler, cost-effective supplement routine, Athletic Greens is giving you a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Go to athleticgreens.com/legalaf. That's athleticgreens.com/legalaf. Check it out. Everybody caught me looking at myself. For those that watch us on YouTube, only on the MeidasTouch network. It's time for Rudy. God, just as a personal aside, maybe I shouldn't mention this. All right, I will. I occasionally smoke a cigar, for those that, and I know I'm going to get a whole bunch of tweets and other commentary about it, but it's like once a month. But I'm a member of a cigar place in Manhattan who occasionally is visited by one Rudy Giuliani. So I have rubbed elbows with him, but I've never spoken to him at this place. But another member of the club is also Al Sharpton. So talk about tobacco makes strange bedfellows. Those two guys are often in the same place at the same time, and they're not the same person. Let's talk about Rudy, because he's in a whole lot of hot water if everything Noelle Dunphy, his longtime former business development manager, if that's what he called her, for the law firm of his lobby law firm, is telling the truth. And I have no reason to believe that she's not. She signed a verified pleading under penalty of perjury that it was 70 pages, 244 paragraphs. Sex, lies, and audio tapes. This complaint has it all. She claims she's been recording Rudy Giuliani for years. She has all of his text messages, which here are some right now that have been thank you, Salty, that have been reproduced by the complaint itself. And it's funny, Karen, when I heard about this story, I thought this is like right out of Borat. When in the second Borat, he thinks, oh, here it is. This is from the complaint. This is not Salty going to get a clip from Borat. Noelle put this clip into this picture, still into the complaint, to say this is exactly what he did to her. Now, this is a scene where in Borat, Giuliani, not in on the joke, doesn't know there's a camera, thinks he's going into the bedroom with somebody who identifies as a reporter. It's really Borat's daughter in the movie, and starts to, well, you can see what he's doing in the picture with his hand down his pants. She says that's common. She also says he forced her to wear nothing at all at work, nude, wear a bikini with the American flag on it while she worked for him. But that's not even the bombshell. Karen, I did a hot take on it, but tell everybody, buried on paragraphs 96 and 132, I believe. My takeaway is that is the lead. And talk about burying the lead inside of your complaint. What'd you pick up from those two paragraphs and anything else that you read that was revolting and disgusting?
Yeah. So what you're referring to is that basically Giuliani was, according to Ms. Dunphy, Giuliani was selling pardons for $2 million, and he and Trump would split the money. So it was very interesting to see that in there. It's not the first time we've heard about this and about him doing this, but I think it's clear, told her and said this to her. Whether that will be borne out by the evidence in the matter, we'll see. But it's clear that that's at least what he was saying to her at the time. So we'll see. Like I said, it's interesting because he was a lobbyist, and there are plenty of people who bring people to, they lobby the people who can give pardons, whether it's the governor in a state or the president, suggestions about people who should be pardoned. And then they get paid sometimes to put together these packets about the individual to say what it is and why it is that they should be pardoned. And so when it crosses the line into criminal activity is definitely something, that is murky, because it's not inappropriate. For example, say a lawyer, Giuliani was a lawyer, to work to try to pardon people and pardon his clients. What's criminal, though, is that he's selling them and splitting the money with Trump. If that turns out to be the case, then that's bribery on the part of Giuliani, and obviously Trump as well would be receiving bribes. And so I think that's, if that it has any merit to it actually happening, I think they're both in deep trouble. That would be extremely, extremely troubling. Look, this lawsuit was really sad. I felt sorry for her, because it's not just that she was working for him and he was, forcing her to have sex with him. And, it's just the story is one of an age-old power dynamic story where a powerful man takes advantage of a woman who is, doesn't have a lot of options. And, she's a very successful woman. She went to an Ivy League school. She worked for many decades as a very successful business person. But she was the victim of domestic violence with her ex, and she had a court case involving him, and she didn't have a lawyer. And she couldn't afford the kind of lawyer that she needed. And he came with a lot of cachet. He used to be America's mayor. He's powerful. He's Trump's personal lawyer. And he said, come work for me. I'll pay you $1 million. That's money that's hard to refuse. And said to her, and I'll represent you in your domestic violence case, in your abusive ex-husband case for free. And, that's the kind of offer that is, when you're vulnerable emotionally, the way she was because of her situation with her ex and involved in this legal case. And she's working for someone like Giuliani, who at the time was much more, the power dynamic is, he's much more powerful than she. It's really tricky. And he starts almost immediately, with this classic sexual harassment, and then turns into sexual assault, where he required her to perform sex acts in order for him to keep representing her civilly and doing her job. And, and when you're, and she explained, I think, that she was also, her mind was vulnerable because of the state she was in, and she wasn't, thinking clearly about what her options were, and she felt trapped. And so it's just really sad. Like, he kept stringing her along. He didn't pay her. He said, I can't pay you on the books because, I'm in the middle of some huge divorce and I want to hide money from my, soon to be ex-wife. I don't want her to know. And, so I'll pay you, I'll pay you in the future. So he didn't pay her what he owed her. He would give her drips and drabs of cash here and there, but he didn't pay her what he owed her. So it's wage theft allegations as well. And, a lot of this was on tape because he gave her permission to record. And I think it was because they were going to write a book, or he wanted to write a book. Sometimes he would press the record button himself on her phone. So a lot of what he said was at his own, he knew he was being recorded. It didn't seem like it was surreptitious. And they indicated in the complaint when certain statements were recorded. Interestingly too, she said some pretty, she said he's a functioning alcoholic, that he drank constantly, morning, noon, and night, and she had to provide him with alcohol. She said he took Viagra constantly. And, he at one point, just would say things that were sexist and racist and anti-Semitic, and that's all recorded, she said. So, it was very traumatizing and very difficult, for her. And it read like that to me. It read like it was a really, like she was really traumatized by what he did, and she said he would obsessively call her sometimes 50 times a day. He was really into BDSM, and like violent language. And he was obsessed with the woman on Billions who, was into BDSM and would wear like black leather and, just stuff like that. And, this is a woman who's trying to have a job, and have some lawyer represent her in a case that she has. And, he takes advantage of her. So I don't know. The lawsuit was just really, like I said, read like, I think it's absolutely happened. It read like, very precise language with proof, in addition to being under oath. And I think that, he's in big trouble when it comes to this. Again, it's just civil. But I think it definitely, it'll be very interesting to see what, as a result of this lawsuit, whether she gets subpoenaed by Jack Smith to, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Or by Fox, because she purposely put a little invitation for Fox or I should say for Smartmatic against Fox in their defamation case, because she said that Rudy Giuliani didn't have her sign a confidentiality agreement or a non-disclosure agreement. She's not a lawyer, so there's no attorney-client relationship privilege issues. And she said she was privy, and I assume this also means she has copies of emails and texts involving Rupert Murdoch, Donald Trump, Don Jr., Ivanka, Eric, Tucker Carlson, and Sean Hannity, Kellyanne Conway, and for I'm not making this up, and for good measure, Bob Costello. Bob Costello, he just keeps popping up like a bad penny. Bob Costello testified against Michael Cohen in the Manhattan DA's grand jury. He said he represented Michael Cohen at one time, and he popped up a couple of weeks ago when the suit sort of was out there. I think she originally filed it on her own without a lawyer, and Costello said, I'm the lawyer for Giuliani. We've read this, and it's completely nonsense, and that's why there's no lawyer involved, and that's why she couldn't find a lawyer, because it's all defamatory and untrue. Then she found a really good law firm, and she signed it under oath, and she refiled it. So, and she says she has texts and emails involving that lawyer, Bob Costello. So we're going to follow this very, very closely.
There's one other.
Yeah.
Before you move on to the next
Sure.
subject, because I can tell you that's what you're doing, because I've been with you now long enough.
I was going to say
know.
one more thing, but no, I get you.
The one thing that really bothered me about this complaint also is I couldn't help but think Giuliani's going to love it. He's going to love this complaint. To him, it will read like he's, how old is he? Like he's,
old.
Old. And he's going to be like, the fact that he has this young, hot woman, blowing him every day and having sex with him and all the things,
Salty.
What?
Nothing. No, it's an adult channel. We're fine.
I mean, I don't know. It's just, but it's like, I just couldn't help it. Like, think he's going to read this and think this is, he's going to feel all like he's disgusting. He's disgusting.
I'll tell you one last thing on this one, or one last thing for me.
Although go on.
No, is that I love the fact in this 25 count suit, they not only get him for gender violence, New York law, sexual abuse, sexual battery, sexual assault, and all the things that relate to sex, hostile work environment, and all of that. But for good measure, a violation of New York's wage and hour law, because she was underpaid and sometimes worked off the books. It wasn't paid. That gives them attorney's fees and costs in a way that the other ones doesn't. And they nailed him, even, I guess this is when he still had his law license, because it's suspended in the state of New York. But she says she also went to him for counseling, as you said earlier, Karen, for a case of hers, and he let the statute of limitations run, breaching his fiduciary duties to her, causing her more damage. So she threw the kitchen sink, and everything else she had at him, which is what you're supposed to do if you're bringing a suit of this type. And I'm ready. We should all be ready, managing expectations, for the playbook to be run against her. The first part of it Karen touched on, which is, look at me, I'm an old ram and I got this young whatever, and which is disgusting. The second is, she's unstable. She had like Karen said earlier, she had a prior one like this. She sued somebody else for money in the past, and this and that. Like, who cares? I mean, if she's been victimized by more than one person in her life, that doesn't mean the second one gets a free pass. And as you accurately described, Karen, that made her vulnerable. Whatever happened to her in her past. And who preys on vulnerable women? Somebody like Rudy Giuliani.
Predators. He's a predator.
Predators who told her, according to the suit, I've wanted you since the day I interviewed you. Who knowing anything about Rudy Giuliani in the last 10 years, last 5 years, last 2 years, doubts that's what he said. And if they doubt it, she's got the tape recordings and the text messages to back it up. So, look, that's Rudy Giuliani, and what's nestled inside of that lawsuit is some interesting stuff that we're going to have to see what the prosecutors do with it.
I was going to say the other prosecutor, the Manhattan DA's office, they could look at this. They could be looking at this, or they could look at this. And in fact, they should. When I was there, we created something called the Work-Related Sexual Violence Unit, because it was to acknowledge the power dynamic in work-related situations, the power dynamic between someone who's your boss and controls your salary and controls your paycheck and controls everything, and how, and how they use that against you. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Manhattan DA's office doesn't at least look at this and talk to her. Because
that's a great observation. You only hear that on the MeidasTouch network. Karen Friedman Agnifilo, former number 2, ran operations at the Manhattan DA's office, saying, hey, Manhattan DA's office, take a look at that complaint and mine it for possible prosecutions that you yourself can do. We're gonna cover a whole lot more, including Ivanka and the rest of the Trumps being in hot water again with Judge Engoron in the New York State Supreme Court trial level court in the $250 million civil fraud case brought by the New York Attorney General, because almost a year to the day that they were found in contempt and fined $110,000 last May. I feel like we just play the old tapes from like last year. They're going to do it again because they failed to produce emails and the judge isn't happy about it. We're going to talk about it in the next segment. But first, a word from our sponsor. Your pet's a member of the family. My Lily certainly is. Don't feed them like they're in the doghouse. Give them Nom Nom. Nom Nom delivers fresh dog food with every portion personalized to your dog's needs, so you can bring out their best. Nom Nom's made with real whole food you can see and recognize, without any additives or fillers that contribute to bloating and low energy. That's because Nom Nom uses the latest science and insights to make real good food for your dogs. Their nutrient-packed recipes are crafted by board-certified veterinary nutritionists, made fresh and shipped free to your door. Nom Nom's already delivered over 40 million meals to good dogs like yours, inspiring millions of clean bowls and tail wags. I love my dog so much and feel better giving her better nutrition. And my dog loves the food and other benefits they've seen. Plus, Nom Nom comes with a money-back guarantee. If your dog's tail isn't wagging within 30 days, Nom Nom will refund your first order. No fillers, no nonsense, just Nom Nom. Go right now for 50% off your no-risk 2-week trial at trynom.com/legalaf. Spelled try, NOM.com/legalaf for 50% off. Trynom.com/legalaf. And we're back. Karen, that's a quick one. Let's talk about, we got 2 things I want you to catch us up on. Ivanka Trump, New York Attorney General, telling the court, where are the emails? Why are there no more Ivanka Trump emails between 2014 and 2017? Where'd they all go? There used to be thousands of them a month. Now there's down to like 10 a month. What happened to them? Why haven't they been produced? And where is the affidavits? I'll tell you, I don't know if you had a chance to check. I'll do it after you comment, Karen. I checked the docket just an hour ago about whether they met their deadline of the 15th of May to file affidavits sworn under penalty of perjury about those missing documents. And then we've got, welcome home, Alan Weisselberg, and your 5.5-month stint in Rikers Island, because Manhattan DA's office, Karen's old office, put you there. Now that you're out, you're very popular. And one thing that you're going to do with your new lawyer that you just picked is you're going to give a deposition in the civil case against Donald Trump under oath. And maybe you'll take the Fifth Amendment, Karen. You can comment on that, and maybe you won't. But you're going to be deposed because the judge just said you would. Karen, what do you think about what's going on there? What are the Trumps doing again in screwing up in front of this judge? And what do you think is going to happen with Alan Weisselberg and the Fifth Amendment?
Yeah, I think Ivanka is clearly, we've seen, tried to distance herself from her family. In this entire proceeding, she hired her own lawyer instead of the lawyer with everybody else. She's noticeably absent in places where she would have been seen before. But I do think it's interesting that she is specifically being called out by the New York Attorney General for her failure to comply with the proceedings. They basically, in April, the Attorney General wrote to the Judge Engoron, saying that the defendants haven't handed over the necessary information and documents, as part of the discovery process in a timely, transparent fashion. As you said, there was this unexplained drop-off in emails for Ivanka between 2014 and 2017. So, for example, they cite in there, it went from like over 1,000 emails per month, to, I think it was like 1,200 emails per month, to 299 emails per month. And then in 2016 to 37 emails per month. And in response, Engoron set the Trump family deadline to hand over all these outstanding requested documents by May 15th, or to submit some kind of compliance affidavit that they complied with their legal observation. So what it seems to me is happening is there could be a legitimate reason why the emails have trailed off if it turns out that she no longer worked there or she stopped using email or something. But it seems like the Attorney General's office thinks there's something else going on, because they insist that there must be something there, or give an explanation why, and they're just not doing it. So, what do you think, Popok, is going on?
I don't know. They're the lawyers again. Look to the lawyers. I mean, Alina Habba has been the lawyer here. We know that her judgment is questionable. I mean, that's the number one thing you need in a lawyer besides talent is judgment, and her judgment has always been impaired. And I think she thinks there's mileage to be had, and they're willing to pay the $100,000 or $200,000 or whatever the ultimate contempt fine is going to be for screwing around with Judge Engoron and trying to destabilize the proceedings. But because I checked today and there's nothing on the docket, and they missed their deadline. I'm sure we'll see. Or I'll just, one caveat, the clerk's office might be backed up in posting to the docket, but I don't think so. And then, you're going to see Letitia James move for sanctions, and Judge Engoron saying, I'm going to charge you $100,000 a day or $10,000 a day until you comply. But I don't know why, for instance, as you said, Ivanka has her own counsel now. She finally, in the last couple of months, and I had thought, talk about, as Ben likes to call it, a rake stepping. I thought she started to separate herself in a way that gave her some ability to negotiate her own situation, her own deal with the New York Attorney General, because we reported on Legal AF. We always say we have new people watching and listening today, but we have people that have been with us for 2 years or more, and this is cumulative education. Although I like to think it's episodic. You can tune in and you'll learn something new today. You don't have to know what we taught in prior Legal AF Academy. But we did talk about that she got new counsel, and she cut a deal to get out from under the financial monitor, a former federal judge, Barbara Jones, that was appointed and by Judge Engoron over all things financial at the Trump Organization during the pendency of the case, to make sure that the money's in and the money's out all match and are appropriate, and asset transfer doesn't happen. She got out from under that. She said, I wasn't really there. I was really gone in 2017. I'm a mom living in Florida now. And the judge, but because the New York Attorney General allowed it, let her out from under that monitoring requirement. And then we heard she got new lawyers. We're like, oh, new lawyers. And at one point, I did a hot take. I thought she was flipping. Although maybe she's flipping on the father. Maybe she's tired of being girlfriend daughter and finally wants to pay back the old man. But now this would be the perfect moment for her lawyers, the new lawyers, to step forward and do something different than Alina Habba and crew, and do what the judge said that they're supposed to do, turn over the documents. Now, she may not be in control of those emails any longer. She's, when you leave, you're talking about 10-year-old, 5, 6, 7-year-old emails. When you leave, it's not like you're able to access your old email account if you've left the company. So a lot of that's still in the hands of the Trump Organization. Yeah, and then Alan Weisselberg, what do you think about Alan Weisselberg and him, about what he can take the Fifth Amendment concerning and what he can't? He couldn't take it about the stuff that he was already given a deal for, right?
Right, but don't forget he was given a deal for a very specific,
right?
Very specific charges involving very specific conduct on certain dates, et cetera. So anything that was not charged, unless the plea agreement says otherwise, and I just don't recall off the top of my head right now, if we ever saw the plea agreement. For some reason, I don't think we did. I think there is a plea agreement, but I don't think we ever saw it. So whatever's in there is I think free game, because he's already pled guilty to it. But it's interesting. He'll have to talk about other things unless he takes the Fifth. I do think he's potentially still liable for I don't think he's off the hook completely with the Manhattan DA's office. I think there's still other possible charges they could bring against him in another case, especially the case that involved the criminal companion matter to the $250 million suit, the asset valuation case. So we'll see.
So I happen to pull up the Manhattan DA's own website, and here's how they reported the plea deal. Weisselberg pled guilty to 15 charges contained in the indictment, that he engaged in the scheme to defraud together with Trump Corporation and Trump Payroll, implicating them in the criminal charges. The court promised Weisselberg a sentence of 5 months in jail to be served in Rikers Island, 5 years probation, provided contingent on Weisselberg testifying truthfully in the upcoming criminal trial of the Trump Organization by providing truthful testimony as to the facts underlying his allocution and plea. He must make full repayment of taxes, penalties, and interest to New York City and New York State taxing authorities of almost $2 million. He shall abide by the conditions of his release, and he pled guilty to those 15 counts of false business records, also at the heart of the Stormy Daniels case, of course, criminal tax fraud, scheme to defraud, all the things about the monies that he was paid under the table related to tuition for his grandchildren, the rent on his apartment, the cars that he was given, all tax-free to him because it wasn't properly reported and falsified by the Trump Organization. So that stuff he's not going to be able to take the fifth because he already got prosecuted for that and served his time. Now, what if she starts going into, which she will, let's talk about loan fraud. Let's talk about asset fraud, where you lied about the appraised value in order to secure a larger loan. The heart of the New York Attorney General case. Let's talk about what you told Zurich Insurance and what Ivanka told in Zurich Insurance in order to secure a loan about the value of an asset, which is a made-up number not based on an independent appraisal. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about deflation of loan value in order to save on taxes. So if you're Alan Weisselberg's lawyer, Karen, what do you do when those questions come up? He hasn't been indicted for those, and he hasn't been prosecuted, and the Manhattan DA's office is still out there. What do you do?
Well, don't forget, there's also potential federal charges, right? I mean, federal tax, crimes and others. So he could still take, and there's no double jeopardy from if he's convicted in the state. There's no double jeopardy, meaning you can't be tried for the same thing twice, federal to state, only state to federal. So the feds could still bring a case, even similar charges to this. So he's still facing potential federal exposure. Certainly he could assert that if he wanted to take the fifth.
So he's going to take the walk down Fifth Avenue, you think?
I do think so. I think he's still very close to the Trumps, and I don't think he wants to do anything that helps any civil or criminal case unless he absolutely has to. He was squeezed pretty hard in the Manhattan DA's case because he was charged and he didn't have a choice. So in that case, go on.
No. I'm just going to say, why don't you remind everybody what happens in a civil case when a witness takes the Fifth Amendment against self-incrimination?
Yeah, well, if you are one of the civil defendants in that case, then that can be used against you at the civil trial. There's like a jury instruction that will say you can absolutely hold that against the person as consciousness of guilt. And you can use it against them. In the civil proceeding, which is very different than a criminal proceeding, right? In the criminal proceeding, you can't factor that in.
I think I haven't seen the case caption in a while. I'm reasonably certain, subject to my research, that Alan Weisselberg is one of the 17 or 18 people that is a defendant in the New York Attorney General's case. So he's not just a witness. He's a Hair Club member. He's also a defendant in the case. So yes, if he takes the fifth, just like Donald Trump had taken the fifth originally, the jury, exactly what Karen said, will be given that instruction. And it's used against him. It's as if effectively he admitted to whatever she's asked him about. So but that's what you do. I mean, there's a reason she wants it. Letitia James, the New York Attorney General, for this very reason. But he's going to have to make his choice, and I'm sure his lawyer, whoever his new lawyer is, I didn't follow who that was. I knew the old lawyer, but the new lawyer I didn't follow who he finally retained. is probably going to tell him, you got to take the fifth because there's too many prosecutors out there that you'll be a pelt on their wall. And, don't worry about the civil side as much. I'm sure he's indemnified, by the way, for certain of these things. And if he's hit, let's say a jury comes back, $250 million judgment against all 17 of these people, it'll probably be jointly and severally, meaning they can go after all or one of them to collect the money until they finally collect all the money. And you know where they're going to start? They're going to start the Trump organization, Trump himself, all of Trump's personal property, his planes, his boats, his cars, his apartments, his everything where he's got tangible and intangible assets. And then finally if they don't get the 250, they'll make their way down the chain to lowly Alan Weisselberg. So I think I agree with you. I think he takes the fifth.
Yeah.
Karen,
And I think,
it.
just prosecutors, I think, are hoping that he doesn't want to go back to jail. He had a taste of jail, right? He had a taste of Rikers Island.
Literally.
And so I think they're hoping he's ripe for cooperation or targeting because, they hope he doesn't want to go back and maybe he'll give more. So, so we'll see. We'll see where that goes. One more thing, though, before we end the episode, Giuliani, going back to him, he was hit with another lawsuit this week, which when I saw it, I thought, well, that looks familiar. I remember that case. Do you remember the case? I think it was a year ago when he was in a grocery store in Staten Island or ShopRite. In Staten Island. And I was like, God, that's familiar. I've seen that before, where he claimed that he was hit by somebody in the store. I think it was an employee, and he claims that the guy hit him. He calls the cops. He has the cops arrest him, and the guy spends the night in jail. And it turns out it was all made up. He wasn't hit by the guy or punched or whatever he said. I think he used some pretty strong language, like felt like an explosion, or I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was like, he said he felt like he was shot. That's how strong it was. Mr. Vigorous, that he's going to try to say with his, rapey sexual prowess, disgusting. He claims he was shot. Well, guess what? Guess what the video shows? The video shows you were tapped on the back, old man, and that's it. And this was a false arrest. And so the guy was let go, and he is now bringing a civil suit against him because it's kind of outrageous. You lie. Thank God things are on video now. And thank God there's so many things that can be proven on video. It's so ubiquitous because you can stop people like Rudy Giuliani who use their power to lie, their power and influence. That's just another example where the cops, they show up. It's Staten Island. He's Rudy Giuliani. Who's going to question him? He was the U.S. attorney for the Southern District. He was the mayor of New York City. He was Trump's personal lawyer. It's using his power and influence again for bad. And just like he did for Noelle Dunphy, and just like he did in that case.
And so eloquently put. I wish we could cover the Harry and Meghan paparazzi chase today through Manhattan.
That's so sad.
It's sad. It ended up at the 19th precinct today, as they were literally being chased, they say, for 2 hours around Manhattan. But that's not our show. It's just sad that it happened, as it's been reported. But we've reached the end of what is our show, which is sitting at the intersection of law and politics and reporting it to you, balls and strikes, with hopefully a little bit of entertainment, but teaching you about the law and politically charged lawsuits as they happen, as we curate our stories each week. We do it on Wednesdays, Karen Friedman Agnifilo. We do it on Saturdays with Ben Meisalis. And support our sponsors. People always ask, how can you support the show? I'll give you many ways. Most of them are free. One of them, watch the show on YouTube. And if you're a podcast person only, listen to us on the podcast, and vice versa. If you're a podcaster, go watch us on YouTube. I had somebody write me on social media and said, I never knew what you looked like until I went over to YouTube. And I took that as a compliment. And then if you listen to us, if you watch us on YouTube, go listen to the podcast, vice versa. So we have merchandise. We're working to update our merchandise. Karen Friedman Agnifilo is taking the lead on that. But for right now, this is our merchandise, and it's available to you, including coffee mugs and long sleeve t-shirts and these t-shirts here at the MeidasTouch store. You can see it right there. We also have ad sponsors. Why do we have ad sponsors? I know people are, why do we have ad sponsors? We have ad sponsors because it keeps the show coming to you uninterrupted, and it gets people paid that help contribute to the show, not Karen and me, but other people. And so that's important. So we like our sponsors, we curate our sponsors, and these are the ones that we like and we support, and we like doing the ads. So please support what they do. And then you can subscribe to the Meidas Touch Network on YouTube. That's free. Just hit plus and you've now subscribed, and it'll keep you in the loop on all the hot takes that we do every week and all the shows that we do. And there's so many podcasts now. It's almost hard for me to keep track of all the Meidas Touch produced podcasts, but there's so many of them. They're all like-minded. If you like what we're doing, you're going to love what they're doing. Karen, any other way they can support us?
Well, just listening, and what really helps me is all the positive remarks that people that they put in the chats or when they comment on the videos or even on Twitter. It's helpful, not just the positive ones, all of them. Criticisms, constructive criticisms, that kind of stuff. I find it helpful to know what people like and don't like, and how we can do better. And even if it's just thanking us for the time, because we all put a lot of time into this and effort. It kind of keeps you going, because it is a lot of work. And
my favorite one last week when I went on to look, we need more Karen.
God.
That was the headline on Apple Pod, and I couldn't agree more. We do need more Karen. I'm so glad that you're my friend and my colleague and my podcast anchor. And that's the end. We're going to see everybody Saturday. I'll be on with Ben Meiselas, and next Wednesday, same time, same channel, with Karen Friedman Agnifilo. Good night, everybody. Shout out to the Meidas Mighty and the Legal AFers.